are watching the show with me, Sohini Dutt. Now, the T-Cross is the next big offering coming to India from the German manufacturer Volkswagen, and it is going to be entering the very busy compact crossover space with this particular SUV. Now, we already know that this SUV is coming to India sometime next year, but we got a chance to drive it in its European variant in the beautiful Mallorca island in Spain. Abhay Verma will tell you more.
As part of its India 2.0 strategy, the Volkswagen Group is planning a fresh product offensive for the Indian market with the body style that Indian car buyers seem to be loving the most right now, SUVs. It's compact SUVs, in fact, to be more precise, and the T-Cross is Volkswagen's latest compact SUV, a compact crossover, in fact, that Volkswagen is planning to bring to India sometime around mid-2020. Well, this compact crossover is going on sale across European markets shortly, and we are in Spain right now driving the Euro spec version of this compact crossover. It's interesting because the weather is nippy, the SUV looks good, it's youthful, has a very friendly and a fresh appeal to it. So let's take a look. The T-Cross is Volkswagen's fourth SUV and is also its smallest yet after the Touareg, Tiguan and T-Roc. Unsurprisingly, the T-Cross's design is inspired by other SUVs in the family, and I also like the boxy shape as it makes the T-Cross look more like a rugged SUV and not a crossover. The headlights flank a muscular looking grille, and the R-line trim we drove also gets a Fox skid plate, adding to the SUV-like stance. The tall hood, upright stance of the cabin, and strong character lines on the sides accentuate the SUV-like feel further, and the T-Cross looks very appealing from all angles. Interestingly, Volkswagen tells us the Indian version will be slightly longer and will have more flared wheel arches in keeping with Indian tastes, which is a good thing. I like the design of the rear as well, as the taillights get black surrounds and are connected by a thick black strip across the boot lid, which looks very distinctive and makes the T-Cross look like a larger and more expensive SUV. Our test vehicle was running 18-inch wheels, which further add to its appeal, as do the roof rails. Volkswagen also tells us that its modular MQB A0 platform has allowed it to stretch the SUV's wheelbase, and given the well-proportioned design of the European spec T-Cross, I cannot wait to see what the Indian version will look like. As far as the interiors are concerned, the T-Cross is quite well spec'd. Looks good, the interiors have a fresh and a youthful vibe. You've got a lot of customization options for how you want the dashboard to look. It's got a full 8-inch digital display for the instrument cluster, and there's a nice capacitive touchscreen here for the infotainment screen. And of course, the plastic quality is good. It feels like a proper German SUV. The star of the show inside the T-Cross is its digital instrument cluster. The display looks crisp and visibility is excellent even in direct sunlight. And as we have seen in Audis, the display also allows you to switch views, and you can even configure it to view navigation in a widescreen format. The large, all-glass touchscreen for the infotainment system is similar to what we've seen in Skoda's cars and accentuates the premium feel of the cabin further. The flat-bottom steering wheel offers a sporty and more upmarket feel and is also nice to hold. There's a range of customization options for the dashboard, while body-colored inserts across the cabin make for a youthful vibe. Fit-finish levels inside the cabin are good, while plastic quality is impressive, and as of now, we can only hope for the Indian version to feel as premium. The European version comes equipped with 2 USB ports up front, 2 USB ports at the back, and a wireless charging pad as well. It also gets radar-based safety features like lane assist, pedestrian monitoring, and more. Additionally, you can also configure it with adaptive cruise control, blind spot detection, park assist and driver alert, which are unheard of in the compact SUV segment. Our test vehicle in fact came with front and rear parking sensors and a reverse parking camera, and while there is no confirmation yet, we can expect the Indian version to be well equipped too. In terms of the backseat experience, the T-Cross is also very impressive for one distinctive reason. You can slide this seat forward or backwards and accordingly adjust the leg space that you need or the luggage space that you need. It's as simple as pressing the lever here and moving the seat front. So you can adjust the luggage space, get more boot space, or you can move it fully back. And this is the amount of legroom I have. And that's despite the fact that I'm about 5 feet 11 inches tall and the driver's seat is set according to my height and my driving position. And even more interesting is the fact that the Indian version of the T-Cross is expected to be slightly longer than this one, the European version of the T-Cross, which means that interior space is only going to be better. There's a range of powertrain options for the T-Cross in Europe, including petrol and diesel engines both, and what I'm driving right now is the 1-litre TSI petrol, which is on offer in 2 states of tune. One makes 95 PS of power, the other makes 115 PS of power, and it is the more powerful version that is most likely to come to India. You could have it either with a 6-speed manual gearbox or a 7-speed DSG automatic, which is exactly what I'm driving right now. The engine feels responsive, it's got a healthy mid-range, and it's only towards the top of the rev range that it starts feeling a little stressed. And interestingly, Volkswagen is most likely to not launch a diesel version of the T-Cross in India initially at least. I am also impressed with how refined the engine feels despite being a 3-cylinder unit, and it has a mild but sporty exhaust note at high revs. We drove the manual and automatic versions both, and interestingly, the manual felt more engaging to drive despite the automatic version being equipped with paddle shifters. As far as the ride and handling are concerned, this is the European spec T-Cross. So the suspension is slightly firm, the steering feels responsive, and that is the kind of behavior that we have come to expect from Volkswagen cars over the years. So it is a good driver's car. This is of course a more of an urban SUV. It's not really meant to go off-roading or mud plugging. So it feels more car-like, which is the kind of feel that a lot of SUV buyers are looking for these days. So the European version of the T-Cross has turned out to be quite impressive. It feels good, feels like a proper Volkswagen, like a proper German SUV. It's nice to drive, it handles really well, and of course it is powered by the 1-litre TSI engine in its higher state of tune, which makes 115 PS of power, and that is the state of tune that we expect to come to India. But like I mentioned before, this is not the exact version of the T-Cross that's coming to India. For India, we will be getting a slightly larger version of the T-Cross, and when it comes down, it should be interesting to see how the market reacts to this SUV, because it does have the potential to do well in the Indian market, which is uber competitive, especially when it comes to compact SUVs.
We do expect the T-Cross to be priced very competitively, somewhere around the ballpark figure of 10 to 15 lakh rupees, and that would bring Volkswagen right back into the volumes game in India. Right, the sub-4 meter SUV space is a very difficult one to crack, and who knows it better than Mahindra. Now, they have made several attempts into this space with the utilitarian Quanto as well as the TUV, and now they have the stylish new kid on the block, the XUV300, which seems to be making some serious inroads into Breza's territory. Let's see how it fares against all the other rivals.
Indianization is one of the keys of ensuring a product success in the volatile Indian market. Everything from fast food to 5-star properties have had to Indianize their offerings to make them more appealing to the Indian masses. Even car makers have gone a step further, or maybe backward, by offering sub-4 meter variants of almost every possible body style. Even SUVs are available in this compact packaging. And now we have a new one, the Mahindra XUV300. It aims at taking on a very established trio: the radical Tata Nexon, the Indian Car of the Year award-winning Maruti Suzuki Brezza, and the Ford EcoSport, the car that in a way kick-started this genre. The XUV300 is a very good example of the fact that in the sub-4 meter category, maintaining that visual balance while also maintaining the space in the cabin is quite a daunting task for the designers. So it does get a very handsome face. It's also got nice and flared wheel arches, a broad shoulder line, but when you get to the tail, it feels like it's abruptly slashed, and that results in an awkwardly large bumper, which in turn leads to a very high loading lip. There's a bit of a Creta vibe to the rear end, but it looks quite bulky. Mahindra has thrown in a large emblem and even larger taillights to balance that design, but the result isn't very pleasing to the eye. Ignore the tail though, and the rest of the design looks more sophisticated than anything that we have seen from Mahindra this side of the XUV500. Both the Nexon and the EcoSport take different design directions compared to the XUV and the Brezza. Both these cars look sportier with their radical faces, sharp noses and rising belt lines. Whereas the Brezza and the XUV, they take simple straight lines, have a boxy stance very similar to old school SUVs. All 4 cars have their own unique design traits that make them quite likable, like the coupe roofline on the Nexon, or the tailgate mounted spare wheel on the EcoSport, or the no-nonsense styling of the Brezza, or the handsome face that you have on the new XUV300. Like I said, all 4 of them are likable in their own unique way, and if I had to put my money on one, it would be the Brezza. The cabin of the XUV300, it gets a bit of a mixed reaction from me. The controls, they aren't very intuitive. For example, you have trip controls on the center console, not in their usual place on the stalks. You do have blank switches which would have otherwise controlled the trip controls for the multi-information display, but for some reason they are just blanks. I don't know why Mahindra would do that. The overall controls, even for the AC and for the audio, not very intuitive, and the way they have been designed, they look like they came out of a boombox from the 90s. I know that you will get used to these controls with time, but then I expected better. Also, now I'm addicted to caffeine, so I am getting a little finicky about cup holders, and the cup holders in here certainly need better Indianization. Most of the takeaway cups that you get from most joints in India, they won't fit in here properly. They're too small, so they get squished and then the lid comes off very easily. Otherwise, what I like about the cabin is the overall space management. I like the kind of colors they have used. The materials feel nice. There's a nice airy feel to this cabin, and the visibility outside of the windshield and the windows is actually quite good. The Breza's cabin feels just as roomy, but the all-black trim could feel claustrophobic to some. The Breza switchgear is the easiest to get used to though, and choosing the range-shopping trim also gets you the SmartPlay infotainment system, which not only reduces the switchgear clutter, but also trumps similar systems in the other three cars by being slicker and crisper. The minimalist layout for the dashboard looks smart, while the instrumentation with its bright dials adds a bit of sportiness. The Nexon has the most spacious cabin of this test, but with its sweeping roofline, getting in and out of the rear seat can be challenging for taller passengers. Like the XUV300, even the Nexon steering is a bit too in your face, and the thick A-pillar hampers cornering visibility. The Nexon and the EcoSport have dashboards with infotainment systems that stick out and sit in line with the instrumentation to remain safely in the driver's peripheral vision. The unit in the Nexon, however, feels a bit laggy. The infotainment of the EcoSport is the most responsive, and it's also the easiest to use thanks to the Sync operating system. Even the instrumentation is the most content-rich, especially in this S trim where it gets a larger display panel between the clocks. Everything is very easy to read, very nicely laid out. It has a bit of a premium vibe to it. The cabin is the tightest cabin of this test, good enough for a nuclear family, and in its darker colors it even appears tighter than what it is. But it's got a very nice premium vibe to it, and that's thanks to the features that it has, the kind of inlays used, the fit and finish. Everything is very nicely put together, and it's got a very pleasing vibe to it, which is what makes this one of the best cabins to be in this particular segment. The Euro, Latin and Global NCAP tests confirm that the EcoSport and the Breza are 4-star safety award winners, while the Nexon won the maximum 5-star rating. At the time of this test, no NCAP rating was available for the Mahindra XUV300 though, but the car maker has promised a high level of safety for the cabin. Like its rivals, even the XUV300 has ABS with EBD, traction control and ISOFIX child seat mounts, but it goes a step further by offering a choice of up to 7 airbags and even forward-facing proximity sensors. Mahindra's body-on-frame SUVs have an exceptionally comfortable ride, especially for the kind of class and the category that they operate in. It's even true for their compact offerings like the TUV300. Gladly, even for the monocoque-bodied XUV300, things aren't any different. It feels supple even on the sharper bumps, and because it's a monocoque construction, it even feels sharper around corners compared to the TUV300. And when the going gets tougher, like most other Mahindra SUVs, it also likes to play it dirty without even having an all-wheel drive system. My only grudge is that the suspension is quite noisy and the metallic clunks give you a feeling that things aren't tightly put together. If Mahindra fixes that, the XUV300 will have the sense of invincibility that you expect from a Mahindra. In fact, even our Nexon and Breza testers, which had a considerable mileage on them, were quite noisy through the potholes and through the sharp bumps. The EcoSport, on the other hand, feels tighter and better put together. The EcoSport isn't much fun to drive around the twisties though. It feels quite understeery and the steering lacks feedback. The Nexon does a marginally better job at tackling curves. None of these cars beat the Breza when it comes to driving fun. It feels taut, it feels sharp, it feels predictive when you hit the bends. It's also got a nice steering setup, it's got great gear shift quality. I just love this car when it comes to having that fun around the twisties. If you are into that kind of stuff too, if you love driving, if you love taking road trips, then the decision is simple. Look no beyond. This is the car for you. But if ride comfort is more important for you over everything else, then probably in this category, the XUV300 will make more sense to you. The EcoSport sits right in between, achieving a fine balance between both and quite silently at that, adding further to that premium feel. The diesel engines that power these 4 cars in our comparison are set apart by about 10 PS. The Breza is the least powerful at 90 PS, whereas the XUV300 is the most powerful. But if you leave these on-paper figures aside, the on-road performance is the exact opposite. The 0.4 seconds, whereas the most powerful XUV300 is the slowest to the ton at 13.7 seconds. The XUV300's 1.5 turbocharged diesel engine is quite a refined and quick-revving motor, but it has a very narrow power band and hits the limiter often. It has a light clutch though and slick gear shifts with its 6-speed manual transmission, and that makes it driving in the city quite easy. It gets to triple-digit speeds without feeling strained either, but past the 120 km/h mark, the XUV300 feels wallowy and unnerving. The spongy brakes don't help either. It's more of a city slicker then, and also shows in its performance and on the high to a litre, which was the lowest of this. In the city, however, the XUV300, on the merit of its micro-hybrid tech, returned a fuel economy of 50. Like the XUV300, even the neck and suffers from a low power-to-weight ratio in its acceleration, but doing quite well for urban use, and that reflects in how effortlessly it drives down. The gear feels springy. The Nexon's brake pedal feel is a bit spongy too, but the car has impressive braking despite its heft. On the highway, the Nexon cruises effortlessly, needing only about 2200 RPM from the engine to maintain 100 km/h. On the other hand, the other three cars need close to 3000 RPM. It also has a strong mid-range grunt, making sure that overtaking is easy at city and highway speeds without having to downshift often. The EcoSport and the Brezza both feel very stable at highway speeds. In fact, the Brezza will even do speeds beyond 150 km/h and still feel very stable, still feel very confidence-inspiring. Speaking of that, even the braking on these two cars is quite confidence-inspiring. It's all progressive. The brake pedal feel is progressive, and that is what I like about these two cars. Because they are so predictive, it makes them all the more easier to drive. Once you experience the refinement levels of the EcoSport's engine though, the age of the Brezza's 1.3-litre engine becomes evident with its gravelly note and noisy acceleration. But this old workhorse is still the most fuel efficient of this lot. Mahindra has made multiple attempts at the sub-4-metre SUV space. You have the Contour, the newer Sport, the TUV300 and now the XUV300. Certainly its best attempt in this space yet. But on the points table, it doesn't quite shake up the competition. Factors like fuel economy, high-speed stability and that tall price point go against it. But then there are other factors that go for it. You have the space, the design, the features, the kind of safety kit that it brings to the table. It's also a future-proof concept because there's an electrified version of this car also coming. So all these factors will ensure that the XUV300 will rake up big numbers for Mahindra. Certainly better than whatever they've experienced in this category so far. But as far as this test goes, well, the EcoSport is still the better car. And yet again, it is the winner of the sub-4-metre SUV shootout.
But just like in the broader scheme of life, you're told to focus on the road farther ahead rather than just what's happening in your life at present. It's something that you should put in practice for your daily driving as well. So here's our Servo Perfect Driving Tip of the Week. A bad driving habit is focusing on the road in front of you or at a bumper of a car ahead of you. Practice instead looking farther ahead. By the time you're in the turn, for instance, you should be looking ahead at your next exit. It may feel like this will cause you to run off the road, but it won't. Your peripheral vision will keep you in line. Now, the FP Mondial HPS 300 is a retro classic motorcycle which is launched in India by Motor Royale. It is imported from Italy, assembled in India, and it is being positioned as a small capacity motorcycle which will offer exclusivity to the Indian buyers, and it will also offer the Italian design and sporty handling. But what does it correlate to in the real world terms? Let's find out.
Now, FB Mondial used to exist several decades ago, had a big name in motorsport, but like several other smaller Italian manufacturers, they ran into trouble, had to shut shop and got resurrected only recently. And one of the bikes they manufacture currently is the HPS 300. Now, the HPS 300 is an interesting motorcycle because it is a retro-styled quarter-litre cafe racer. And this bike has been launched in India. It comes in via the CKD route courtesy Motor Royale and is on sale currently. So, let's take it for a ride. To categorize it broadly, you could simply call the HPS 300 a retro classic, but while the tiny dimensions, mirrors mounted at the handlebar ends and crouch-down riding positions suggest cafe racer, the side-mounted exhaust, dual sport tires and wire spoke wheels remind of scramblers. It's a bit of a mix of both, and FB Mondial likes to call it a hipster, and hence the HPS in the name. The HPS 300 looks very appealing, particularly thanks to details like the gloss black finish on the forks and short chrome mudguard up front, as also the heat covers on the exhaust, copper finish on the rear shock canisters, short tail and distinct looking number plate holder at the rear. The contrasting green stitching and HPS name embroidered onto the seat are also some cues about the manufacturer's attention to detail. I also like the design and detailing on the fuel tank. The single pod instrument cluster is an all-digital affair and looks exactly like the one we've seen on the Ducati Scrambler, but it does not feel very premium. The HPS 300 in fact looks and feels more like a garage-built motorcycle rather than one made in a factory. This adds to its distinctiveness, but I wish fit finish levels and quality of plastics were better. That said, I have to mention that the HPS 300 looks unlike any other motorcycle in India, and there was barely anyone on the road who did not give it a second glance or admire the bike's design.
Now for a motorcycle that looks so good and is positioned as a cafe racer, you would expect the HPS 300 to have a firecracker of an engine, but the powertrain is disappointing because this motorcycle is powered by a 250cc liquid-cooled single-cylinder engine that makes about 22.8 PS of power. And that is disappointing for a quarter-litre machine in today's day and age, because I would expect a bike like this to have at least 30 PS of power.
The exhaust note is not very impressive either, and I would have liked a more distinctive sound in keeping with the bike's design. And given its power and torque outputs, the bike feels underpowered on the road and acceleration is not too impressive. The HPS 300 clocked a 0 to 100 kmph time of over 12 seconds in our acceleration test, which is, to add to it, most of the power is concentrated towards the top of the rev range, so there's very little shove at low revs. The peaky power delivery also means you are left wanting for more grunt in the city and need to keep working the gearbox to find that punch. But with less than 25 PS on offer, there is not a lot of punch even at the top, and the HPS 300 runs out of steam rather quickly. One thing I liked about the powertrain though is the lightness of the clutch lever and the slick shift from the 6-speed gearbox. Fueling could have been smoother though, especially at low revs, and vibration damping could have been better too, as the engine sends out vibration through the foot pegs and seat as you close in on the red line.
But the HPS 300 does impress in the ride and handling department. It uses a double down tube frame along with 41mm upside down forks at the front and gas charge shocks at the rear, and these together offer a brilliant mix between ride and handling.
The one thing Italian bike makers always seem to get right is handling, and the HPS 300 is yet another example. It feels nimble when it comes to making quick directional changes in traffic and is also quick to turn into corners. The HPS 300 comes shod with dual sport tyres from a brand called CTS, which is unheard of in India, but grip levels are good even when leaned over into corners. The 18-inch front and 17-inch rear wheel combination works well, while the suspension feels firm enough to offer a confident feel. But given its lackluster engine performance, the HPS 300 feels a little over-engineered, and a more powerful engine should help in exploring the bike's handling abilities better. The HPS 300 also boasts an impressive ride quality. You might want to assume that its sporty handling compromises ride quality, but the upside-down forks and gas-charged rear shock absorbers soak up bumps and potholes well, thereby making for comfortable rides. The ergonomics are better suited to shorter rides only though, as the forward crouching stance takes a toll on your wrists after longer rides, and the foot pegs are a little too rear set as well. And while they look good, the side-mounted exhausts come in the way when placing your right foot on the foot peg, which also adds to discomfort after a while.
The HPS 300 feels Italian in a lot of ways. It looks smashing to begin with for effectively what is a quarter-litre motorcycle. In fact, it looks so good, I've had people stop, take notice, give it a second glance, and even assume that this is a higher capacity machine. The ride and handling is good, though the powertrain is a bit of a letdown. In fact, had its engine made about 6 to 8 PS more power, this would have been a lot more wholesome as a package. But the biggest spanner in the works for the HPS 300 is its pricing of rupees 3.37 lakh rupees ex-showroom, which is exorbitant for a quarter-litre motorcycle. In fact, you can get a lot more motorcycle in India today for that kind of money. But to its credit, the HPS 300 does come with an air of exclusivity. Well, if it weren't for the exorbitant pricing or the underpowered engine, the HPS 300 is certainly a motorcycle to have in your garage.
We do hope that you've been having a very good festive week. You can track the latest automotive happenings on our Facebook, Twitter, as well as our Instagram page, and you can follow our latest videos on our YouTube channel. Drive safe and smart until we see you next week.